Hi, everyone. Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. Well, thanks so much for coming by to this session here at B-Side Seattle. My name is Louie. I'm a psychiatrist here in Washington State. It's great to talk about mental health things and cybersecurity with everyone here. And I'll be talking about this thing called the Biopsychosocial 4P matrix. It's a way of thinking about mental health, not just for patients, but what I think, and I'll share with you today, about how we can use the same tool for looking at organizations and understanding what kind of threats might be happening, or if there might be some mental health stuff going on that might be exploited by people with bad intentions. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about mental health, and we're going to see what we can use, how we can use this tool to understand this thing called the mental health attack surface. Okay. I love the theme of B-Side Seattle 2024. It's about, it takes a village, and that it's about gratitude. And so we'll start out by expressing gratitude to the people that have helped you to get you to where you are here, professionally, family-wise, personally, and also, most importantly, give gratitude for yourself. You've come a long way. You've taken time out of your day to come here to meet people, learn new things, and to feel good and kind of level up and take it to the next level for yourself in many different dimensions of your life. Atmosphere of safety. We're here to create a safe environment. We're going to be talking about mental health. We want people to feel good inside, physically, mentally. And of course, everyone stay in touch with the people important in your life, medical providers, and of course, if there's any emergencies, and we always ask people, 911, get that emergency help, get that help, okay? And we're ethical. Always constantly nurture that feeling and always bring it into your practice of being ethical and doing the right thing, okay? And this is educational, so we're all learning and growing together. So keep these 4 things in mind today and throughout the sessions that you visit today. So I'm a psychiatrist, and my favorite question is, how are you feeling? I always ask everyone this. And you might think about your day today, getting here to this campus for B-Side Seattle. You might think about what you did during this week at work or at home or during your leisure times. Maybe you had some good things, maybe not so good things, stressful things, happy things, exciting things. A lot of things in your mind. We take a mental health inventory. I think a central theme in a lot of these talks is to do asset management, like, knowing what you got, what's under the hood, what's inside all these machines and who has access to everything. Well, we do the same thing in psychiatry in terms of our feelings and emotions. Take that mental health inventory. They all might go in all these kind of different directions, up and down and sideways and everywhere. But we need to have some kind of system to kind of think about and make sense of all these things that are going on in our mind. You might have even felt some of these things that I listed here in this chart. You might have felt happiness, maybe sadness, stress, risk, uncertainty, fear, a whole bunch of different kind of feelings and emotions. Maybe even some emotions that we can't even describe or don't even know how to express. But nevertheless, they are real because you're feeling them and you know it's there. Okay? How does all this fit into our heads and our minds? We actually look at the surface area of the brain. So I'm just talking about the surface area, and I read somewhere that's actually the size of 4 newspapers all laid out, all open, and that's the surface area of the brain. And of course, that doesn't count all the insides of the brain, all the neurons and the substance of the brain itself. A lot of things going on. It might be one of the most mysterious things in the world in terms of how the brain works, and we're constantly thinking about that, okay? But as you might imagine, that even in printed matter and in our digital age of the things we consume and the things that we interact with every day, it has a definite, very real impact in terms of how we think and how we feel. And one of the things I always think about is, could there be someone right in the middle that is influencing or making things happen in ways that might not be in the patient's or a person's best interest? And that person might even have bad intentions. And in this surface area, or mental health surface, attack surface, the attacks can go far beyond just what's on the surface of things. It could affect people's words, emotions, their feelings, their thoughts, how they behave, how they think about themselves in the past, how they think about themselves right now in the present, and what they plan to do in the future. It could be very, very influential, and it could be happening even as we speak, and we may not even know that it's happening. What does this landscape look like? What is this mental health, attack surface like? Well, a good way of looking at it is through the FBI's annual report from the IC3, the Internet Crimes Complaint Center. And this is the most recent data from the 2023 report. And it shows a chart of all these different types of cyber crimes. And in this chart here, it shows the huge financial cost of cybercrime. And you see right at the top, investments, and then BEC, business email compromises, and all kinds of cyber crimes. And there's huge numbers. And these are only the ones that are reported. It doesn't even count the ones that people may not have even stepped up to report, or maybe there's not that complete, accurate picture of it, but it just gives you a sense of the huge range of it. So as a psychiatrist, I'm always thinking, I look at this chart and I say, well, for everything that happened here, there was a person that was the victim, there was a person who was trying to help out, and then everyone in between. And imagine the stress that's going on for each of these things. Like, look at identity theft. We see $126 million. But what does this do for a person's mental health in terms of what they're feeling? So we ask about what is the mental health cost? And for every type of cybercrime for every type of cybercrime, there's a mental health impact component. So for example, when patients tell me that they've been a victim of identity theft or fraud, oftentimes they describe to me these sort of feelings. They sometimes tell me that they feel violated as if it were a physical attack. They sometimes have paranoia. They're kind of very cautious about things. They doubt things a lot. It certainly makes them feel anxious. It doesn't make them feel good. They're worried, like, should I be online shopping again? Should I even be doing this? And they avoid technology. These are technologies that obviously have two sides of the same coin, advantages and disadvantages, but they might be taking more precautions than would be typical, and hence they might be losing out on a technology that might otherwise have been helping them. So they avoid those kind of things. These are certain examples of changes in behavior from these types of things. We talk about mental health effects in cybersecurity. I mean, with all of these effects of cybercrime, it impacts both victims and first responders, and these might be the same people. In cybersecurity, as many of you have maybe heard about or maybe even experienced yourself, there's a lot of things that go on. Josh Michaels gave a great talk this morning on burnout in cybersecurity. He talked about burnout, and that's part of it too. There's other things that might go on as well, like stress and anxiety, even PTSD kind of things, post-traumatic stress disorder type of symptoms, paranoia, delusions, anxiety. There could be substance use issues and alcohol and many other things. It's a very, very complex and evolving kind of situation. So it got me thinking about that we're no longer in our own silos. In medical school and residency training and even in hospitals and clinics, we don't really talk about cybersecurity all that much. We talk about passwords and IT departments, and we get that orientation. But oftentimes we have to think more broadly about that. I'm thinking that cybersecurity is actually a vital sign. It's part of patient care. Patients ask me, hey, will these mental health records, who's going to see them and who's going to access them? Where are they stored? These are all active conversations that we all need to have. So when I think about this, I think we should all work together. So cybersecurity and psychiatry, if we blend it together, we think about like cybersecurity. Okay. Now, in terms of this mental health attack surface, a natural question was, how do you know if something might be going on? How do we know if there's something kind of brewing, or how do we even know? Can we know? One way to look at it from a lens is to look back at your own type of work. So I'll use my own example. I'm a psychiatrist, so in my mode of work, I work with patients, and they oftentimes come to my clinic with a problem. So we look at the problem, we talk about what's been going on, we do an interview, then we kind of build this thing, a diagnosis. We actually call it a differential diagnosis. It's the idea that give me your best guess and rank order them. So number one, I think it's this. Number two, I think it's this. Number three, I think it's this. So you're kind of building your diagnosis. And then you assess, you kind of put all the data together, kind of think about it. So I think this is what's going on. Here's the proposed treatment. Would you be agreeable to do this kind of treatment in this pathway? And then we select a treatment. In my case, I help patients with medications. and then we look at the response, and it kind of goes in this way. We talk about precision medicine, and you might have seen this term around in the media. It could be very technical and like kind of like very molecular, but it could be as simple as listening to a patient, understanding what they need, and picking a treatment that fits right for them. I see that as precision medicine. So that's one way we could do it. To see how this all works, let's look at Charlie Brown. I love Charlie Brown, and I like this because Lucy is a psychiatrist, and Charlie Brown sees Lucy the psychiatrist every December, every winter, usually in the middle of December, and she always charges 5 cents. She's always in, but Charlie Brown, the patient, a question is, has he been helped, and in what ways has Lucy the psychiatrist helped him? So, in looking at this, we see a lot of things that are going on. We see a patient who needs some help, and we see a provider. And for those of you who may not be familiar with this story, Charlie Brown is a person in this story who is assigned to get a tree. He selects a tree that's not good, or at least he thinks it's not good, and he thinks that he's a failure. Probably a lot of imposter syndromes going on for him. But then he sees Lucy's psychiatrist, and he wants to find meaning. Lucy's psychiatrist gives him a whole bunch of diagnoses, a lot of phobias, and then it actually overwhelms Charlie Brown, and he gets knocked out. But then he says, Lucy says, what you need to do is join the school play. So he finds that as a therapy for himself, and at the end of the story, all is well, he feels better. Okay? So how do we make sense of something like this here? Here's a slide of this biopsychosocial model 4P matrix. It's a technique that's been developed decades ago, and it's taught in medical schools. It was taught in my residency training program, psychiatry. It's taught in many other type of classroom settings. And it's one way to describe and to parse out, to micro-dissect what might be happening for a patient's mental health and life history and condition in a way that helps us understand it a little bit more. And there's many variations of this. There's even expanded categories, but I just picked 3 main ones: biological, psychological, social. You see that all coming across the top there. And then along the right hand, or your left side of the chart here, are these things called 4 Ps. They are things like predisposing, precipitating, perpetuating, and protective. Okay? So each of these are things that allow a certain thing to happen or increase intensity of happening. There are things that promote or make something worse or kind of fester or keep rolling or snowballing. There's certain things that trigger it, like a precipitating event. And then lastly, there's something that's protective. So it's something good, something that's protective for this person. So I left this intentionally blank, and I left it just as a still screen here, because in actual life, I want everyone here to picture this in your mind. Just kind of have that in your mind. A 3x4 chart: biopsychosocial, biological, psychological, social, predisposing, precipitating, perpetuating, protective. And I laid it out like this because oftentimes when things happen, we don't have time to dig out that chart. Oh, where's that chart? Or we don't have time to write things down. If there's like incident response going on, things are really stressful. Things might be very, very chaotic. You want to just have this in your mind, flash it just really quick, and use a mental note. You're not even using any physical thing for writing, but just kind of place them in your mind. What goes here? What goes there? What goes there? And just talk through it, even talking through it or thinking about it in your mind. So we can do this with Charlie Brown. Biological. We don't know much about his parents. Actually, there's no adults in the cartoon. And all you hear is his voice that says, wah, wah, wah. So we don't know that. But we do know that biologically, he has a sister, Sally, and he looks like his home's pretty good. He seems to be, pretty healthy in terms of physical health. And, he's not the best athlete. Lucy always takes that football away, and he always tries to kick it, and he falls on the ground. But in general, we don't know a whole lot about biological things, but we see that he's kind of managing, okay? But in the realm of psychological and socially, there's a lot of things going on, right? Psychological, predisposing. If growing up, Charlie Brown was always kind of doubting himself, he's always trying to kick that football, and Lucy at the last moment removes the football, he's missing it all the time. So he's getting this feeling that he can't do things well, right? Precipitating. In this story that we just had, he was assigned to be in charge of getting the tree. That's a stressor. He got assigned with the job, and then he brought it back, and his deliverable was like, everyone laughed at him. They thought it was kind of a wimpy tree, but it turned out to be good. Perpetuating, people kind of laughed, and there were people kind of like putting that pressure on him. Protective, He has Snoopy. He has his dog, a pet dog, who's been supportive, although he's very independent. But he has a very good friend, Linus. So that's a very protective thing for him psychologically. Oftentimes, the psychological realm also goes into the social realm because these same people who helped him with being protective also serve as both good things and could be negative things as well. Because in this story, the predisposing factor is that a lot of people laughed at him. So that's a lot of social stress. But at the end of the story, after he decides to join the school play, everyone kind of comes together, decorates the tree, he finds the true meaning of the holidays, and he's able to do it. So that's a protective matter and perpetuating in terms of that sort of like a sequence of things, and he was able to resolve it. And that's the story within a 30-minute show. So that's Charlie Brown. As I brought that example up, you might see how it might relate to your own life. Everyone has to have some kind of thing that might be applicable to them. And in many cases, we might be similar to Charlie Brown in many ways. I'd like to extend this beyond the way of looking at it in terms of people to a whole organization, okay? So in a whole organization, or an organization is made up of people, and oftentimes at the helm of a leader who generates the culture. We can even apply the same thing to companies. Biological, this is like the DNA of the company, the founder statement, the history. We've always done it this way. Innovation happens like this. And this is the way that's done. It's policy, it's set in stone. We all get that mantra through the orientations and the way we work in teams. So that could be biological. It could be predisposing, right? And then precipitating. Oftentimes the precipitating stress in the world of cybersecurity is a cybersecurity incident, right? So all of a sudden there's things happening. Perpetuating. If there's a culture of not wanting to say no to certain things, everyone wanting to work after hours, and everyone wanting to look good for the team, it's good and bad, right? Josh said at today's session that even helpers need help, all right? So that could be perpetuating. It's that constant idea of wanting to do good things, right? And protective. Maybe the company has a good mental health program in place. Just like the previous speaker from CISA said that don't come during the emergency times. Get there early, get that contact. That's protective, right? So, and that's just one example. Psychologically, socially, in these companies, they are social organizations. A lot of things going on as a psychological aspect as well. Psychological safety, right? So being able to understand something that keeps things safe, that people are able to speak up. If something is wrong, say something, right? If you see something, say something. So that's part of the aspect of it as well. And then also socially, because we are all people, we look up to our colleagues for support, we look up to our mentors and our teachers and our leaders for that leadership of guiding the mission, both personally and as an organization. So with this kind of chart, you get the idea that you get a lay of the land, this whole landscape of all these different things that are going on, and it helps you organize a different view of things, seeing in various different dimensions, being able to categorize it and organize it in your mind. With that, after you gather all the data, and this happens in medicine too, we build this thing called the differential diagnosis. Doctors usually say, what's your best guess of what might be going on? And for us in psychiatry, we think about different symptoms like depression or anxiety or other kind of things, and we rank them. And in medical school, they always talk about these things called horses and zebras. They don't talk about unknown to the mind, so I added that part. But for common things, if someone has a certain set of signs and symptoms, it's most likely that, right? So that's common. You got to know that. We can't miss those kind of things. Rare stuff. Definitely possible, rare, but very unusual sometimes. It always shows up on exams, so that's why we learn zebras in med school. So I put in the zebras, those are rare. But I want to bring up this one way on the right side, unknown to the mind. In the cybersecurity world, I guess that would be called a 0 day. So things that have never been exploited before, we've never seen them, they just pop up in the wild, and we don't know what to do about it. Sometimes it might even be a backdoor of some type. It might be happening even when we don't even know what's going on. So that's something that's important to look at. So when thinking about that last part of things unknown to the mind, I started thinking about in my own field in psychiatry, can that be happening? Can there be an active person or an actor of some type that might be actively counteracting what a patient's well-being is all about? And I don't know of any actual cases of this happening, but in many ways, it's already happening. Look back at that IC3 report. There's all those cyber crimes going on. And we already know that attackers are targeting people's mental health. They target the elderly because they're more vulnerable to scams. They might be using a certain social media platform because it has access to a certain audience, and they know people's behaviors and things like that, right? And a lot of data might be exchanged from people's phones, right, in terms of usage data and privacy and things like that. So I started thinking about psychiatric engineering, and I was thinking that it's the creation of mental health signs and symptoms by a person who might have bad intentions and who manipulates a victim by exploiting their mental health. And they do this by using precision medicine in a twisted anti-Hippocratic oath type of way. Okay, so that's psychiatric engineering. And we look back at that chart in terms of how psychiatry is provided. That's the one at the top, psychiatric care. What about psychiatric engineering? That's at this lower part here. At every point in the process, every point of the way, there can be an intervention by a bad person, and that person means that they're exploiting something somewhere along this trajectory. Signs and symptoms might be created or engineered. It might lead to an altered interview, which means that it's an artificially, inaccurately engineered diagnosis. And this might not be known by the patient. It may not even be known by the doctor. If I were to say in my differential diagnosis, when I'm reporting to colleagues, I said, well, in my differential diagnosis, I think it's going to be, let's say, depression secondary to a cyber attack. They might say, what? Or secondary to hacking, or secondary to something, that's so far down on the list. But I think that we have to generate a culture that we have to start talking about that, because I think that it's not going to be ranked number 100 in terms of the possibilities. I mean, we're seeing cyber attacks happening in the healthcare space even as we speak right now. And so that's probably going to be rising upwards. So this is a chart that lets us think about what that process might be. Now, how we might be able to do this is that there's a way forward. It's about takeaways that you can do and take for yourselves to make it your own, right? You take that mental health inventory, get that asset inventory, know what's there. You're going to use the biopsychosocial 4P matrix, have it in your mind, and think about how you want to use it, and keep it handy, because it's always in your mind. Just kind of think about it. Oh, yes, I see that chart. Start filling it in mentally. Use it for people. Use it for yourself. Use it for organizations. Start making that differential diagnosis. Practice at it. It's always okay to say, hey, what about this? What about that? Just lay it out there, because if we never lay it out and we never know it exists, and we will never be able to talk about it if we don't know that it's there. So just kind of lay it out there, and be open to new ideas, new people, new backgrounds. Exchange ideas, go across different fields and think about it, and work together. And always stay curious. Always wonder about things. Horses, zebras. Things from left field, unknown to the mind, okay? And of course, we go back to that first slide when we talked about the theme of Seattle B-Sides 2024. We go back to those same things, because these are actually your protective factors. It's that bottom row, right? It's things about being thankful, expressing gratitude, building the atmosphere of safety wherever you go, being ethical, and always constantly learning and doing good things and growing, okay? So everyone, start with security in mind. If you have your mindset in the right place and you feel that's the right direction and you're doing good things for yourself and for your organization, you can feel confident that you are making the right choice. Okay. And with that, I'll take questions, and feel free to send me a message if you have anything you want to share. And I'm also on Twitter, or now, I guess it's called X now, so that's me. And thank you very much. Yes.
So the first question. So first of all, thank you so much for the presentation. I think the first question is, are the slides going to be available afterwards?
Yes.
Some of the things I didn't have time to write down, and so I appreciate that.
Yes.
The second is, it sounds like the anti-pattern you were talking about sounds a lot like what the military would call psyops. So where they're looking at the psychological aspects and how they would influence it. So I wonder if there's already some existing study or research. It may not be public, but that's one thing. Also on the healing part you were talking about, in a lot of engineering, they'll have a retrospective at the end of each sprint or cycle, and that seems like a particularly valuable place to insert this psychological way of thinking to help the team as a group to study their support, the different types of mental burnout, like things like that. So I'm curious if those were the things that came to my mind. Like, do you have any thoughts on that, or any other ways where we might be able to take these lessons back with us to our job?
Yes, yes, thank you. And the first question is, will the slides be available? Yes, they will be posted online. If you send me an email, I could give you the slides. I'll probably just post them up on Twitter as well, so we can have them seen. And the second question, PsyOps, psychological operations. Yeah, that's been going on for a very long time, and the military has been, it's been an active use in militaries around the world. You know, both public information, maybe not public kind of information. I haven't looked too much into that, but I do know that it exists, and that's a great question, because psychological and psychiatric, there's a lot of the mental models and things that happen in the mind, but in terms of psychiatry, I'm thinking like if we drill down to the level of medications and to actually influencing that, that's something I want to look at. But great question. And retrospect, sort of like looking back, yeah, certainly have that active conversation. Don't be afraid to talk about things. You don't need to be a psychiatrist or mental health professional to talk about it. It's in your DNA.
Thank you so much.